Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. Are your marketing strategies really connecting with your customers? Or are you automating so many of your practices that you're just making customers upset without listening to what they're really telling you, especially on social when you cannot connect with them? Mark Schaefer is a well known college educator, best selling author, keynote speaker, and marketing strategy consultant. He's also a major influencer in digital marketing. And on this episode, we'll discuss everything from all encompassing marketing strategies, the trust factor, social media, influencer marketing, and how companies can do better to connect with consumers. So let's tune in to an influential strategist with an influential shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Mark, thank you for joining us on A Shark's Perspective today. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background and your career thus far.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's great to connect with another Tennessean. I started out as a journalism major, which actually was a career choice that served me quite well in the marketing and social media age. But who would have thought it at the time? And fell in love with marketing. Wanted to get into marketing, so eventually in my corporate career, I worked myself into a marketing job and had oh gosh, just about every kind of marketing job you could imagine, and business development, and I oversaw R&D for a while, and then started to get into the digital side of it and CRM, digital marketing, customer portals. And almost exactly 10 years ago, my 10th anniversary is coming up pretty soon here in October. Um, I started my own company, and it was just a good time for me to try something different. I was in a good financial position. The kids' college education was paid for, and I'd been doing a little on the side, a little consulting on the side, and decided that I liked it and was good at it. And it's been a great success. Really, it just started to climb from the beginning. And today, I'm a consultant. Marketing strategy is really my strength. I really can help companies sort of focus in on where they need to be going with their marketing and sometimes even with their business strategy.
Sure.
I'm also a speaker. That I've written 6 books. I'm working on my seventh, and that's kind of spawned a speaking career. I do enjoy writing, so I have a blog and I have a podcast, and I'm a writer. As I said, I've written 6 books. Basically, sort of in the digital space is the theme of all the books, and yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Well, and you've worked with some amazing brands. I know that I got introduced to you early on by reading, I think, Born to Blog, which was
Mhm.
a great book. And then I've seen you speak, and obviously I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially the marketing companion that you do with Tom Webster. But what sort of inspired you to do that podcast as well?
Well, I'm a curious person, and the reason I start just about anything is to learn. When I
Absolutely.
started my own business, I knew I had to immerse myself in the world of social media and figure it out and learn it. I mean, you can't help people unless you've done it, unless you have kind of lived this journey. And so I immersed myself in social media and started blogging really kind of as an experiment. And after about 9 months, I realized that all my business benefits were coming from this blog, and I really needed to take this seriously. So I kind of doubled down on the blog. And then about 5 years later, podcasting was emerging and it was important. And it was a really difficult decision to start a podcast because I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize the quality of my blog. In my mind, sort of my theme is I will never let my readers down. It's always going to be worth your time when you visit my blog. You may not agree with it, but it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be provocative. You'll learn
Hmm.
something. So it's like, wow, do I really want to take on this other thing? So I decided the only way I could do it and maintain the quality of everything else is if I had a partner. And so I just thought about it. I said, there's one person I would do this with. It's Tom Webster.
Sure.
because we have just such a great
Oh, you
chemistry and
play
a great
very well off
friendship.
each other.
And so I called him up and I said, "Would you want to do a podcast with me?" And without hesitation, he said, "Absolutely." And that was the beginning. And so we've been at it over 5 years now, and it's still fun. It's still joyful to do it, and we only do it every other week. A
Right.
lot of people want us to do it, every week. Certainly, we could get a lot more downloads and a lot more sponsors if we increase the frequency. But if we increase the frequency, it wouldn't be fun, and that would come through to our listeners. So that's how I got into podcasting.
Well, you were early on with influence as well. In one of your books
Yeah.
that I read, Return on Influence.
Hmm.
What made you think about that? That was what, 2012. I mean, that
Yeah.
was pretty early
Well,
in the mix. I mean, social media was
yeah.
only halfway through its span, but I mean, influencer marketing has really just exploded in the last year to 2 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was an early thing you saw. What was it that you saw that thought this is
Well,
where it's going?
yeah. It started out with one of the first software company that tried to figure out this space was a startup called Clout, Klout.
Mm-hmm.
And I was absolutely fascinated by this idea that you could use big data and analytics to look at social media content
Sure.
and behaviors and perhaps create some sort of measurement that would be an indicator of influence. Now, so this first company was called Clout, Klout, and it was a very controversial company. It was just a lightning rod. I mean, there's still a lot of controversy about influence marketing. So if you could imagine the first company to say that they're trying to measure your influence,
Absolutely.
got rocked. But the more I learned about it, the more I was convinced they were onto something. And then I got to meet the founder of the company at South by Southwest, and that really changed everything because I had been in discussion with McGraw Hill. They knew I was a good writer and kind of a forward thinker. They wanted me to write a book, so I said I think the world is going to change. There's this interesting power shift that's going on. The power is moving from Madison Avenue to Main Street, and 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 this is going to create a whole new way to market. It's going to be based on individual influence. Nobody was talking about that in 2011 when I was writing this book. Influence marketing, it wasn't even a term. And and if you go back and look at Google Trends and look at and say like influence marketing or influencer marketing, back in 2012, then um, that was the beginning. There was almost no search traffic at all. Then what happened was my book took off, and I was on CBS News, and they interviewed me on CBS News. And Gail King held the book up, and she had all these post-it notes in it, and said, This is one of the best business books I've ever read." And then, boom, it became the best-selling business book on Amazon for 2 months in a row. And if you look at Google Trends, in that month, there was a little spike.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning. That was the beginning. There was a little spike, and then it's gone up and up and up and up and up. And today, influence marketing is the second fastest line item on a CMO's budget. Still kind of controversial, but endlessly fascinating.
Well, and most people still don't know how to do it well, even when it's not controversial, because they get so lost in in the Instagram fix with
Right.
thinking through. You've just got to hire a lifestyle blogger, and
Yeah.
that's sort of their mix. But you're an influencer. I mean, you're well
Mm.
respected. You have a lot of weight in that being a speaker. What do you think are the keys that have helped you become a successful influencer?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing it's just consistent with my brand that I'm never going to do something that's going to betray the trust of my audience. So I don't participate in any sort of backlink schemes. I don't do any advertising on my site. I
Right.
don't do any promoted content. And I've turned down thousands and thousands of dollars, but it's just not worth it because once you do that, you become an ad instead of a
Yep.
trusted voice. So, I mean, it was never my intent to become an influencer. It still isn't. It's not even in my mind. But I think people do pay attention to me. They do listen to me because they know I'm a person who is honest. I want to do good work. I want to help people. I want to speak the truth. And, at least for me, I don't have a massive Instagram following like a lot of the, people that are pumping, energy drinks and stuff like that.
Sure.
Um, but when I speak, people listen. I had an interesting experience. I had dinner with a friend this week, and he came out with a new book a few months ago, and absolutely love this book. And I did a little Facebook Live, and I showed the book, and I said, "Oh, this is so amazing! My friend has done such a good job with this," and his book sales just soared. And people said, "Mark, you don't do this very often, so when you recommend something, we really pay attention to you. I'm going to go buy this book right now." So that's really, to me, what influence is. It's having that engaged, trusting audience, so that when you speak, they listen and you can affect people's opinions and behaviors.
Yeah, well, we hear so much know, like, and trust, but and I completely agree with that phrase. But trust should be in all capital letters. It's just what you build is what
It
builds the
absolutely, you're
influence.
absolutely right. And unfortunately, this is so sad that trust is a point of differentiation today.
Right.
We know it. We know that trust has to be the fundamental basis of our business.
Hmm.
And yet, how many businesses are willing to step up and say, "We will never let you down. We will never
Exactly.
let you down." Do you know an airline that'll do that? Do you know a cable company that'll do that? Uh, there's lots of companies that most of the companies that we deal with in our lives, they're still opportunistic. They still abuse customers with, spam and direct mail and robocalling and all this stuff. Trust is really it always has been the basis of business. And with our digital presence today, we have the greatest opportunity ever to reinforce that trust. And instead, I find that people miss that opportunity.
Agreed, because I think too many influencers today focus on capitalizing know and like, especially knowing because in digital marketing it's easy to sort of get your name and word out there, but it you can
Hmm.
destroy a lifetime of credibility if you ignore
Sure,
the trust part. So
sure.
you do the podcast, the blogs, the website, lots
Mhm.
of posts, you on TV. What are the best forms of content that you've seen that's helped amplify your influence over the years?
Well, I mean, for me, my my best form of content um, is writing, and the reason is because I'm a writer,
Yeah, you're
and
a good writer.
that's what I love. And but really, to create influence in the digital space today, you've got to create some sort of content, and that's where people sort of roll their eyes and say, "Oh, I don't have the time," or "I can't do it." But it doesn't have to be difficult, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and you really only have four choices. People say, "Oh, do I need to have a podcast? Do I need to be on LinkedIn? Do I need to be on Facebook?" You only have four choices. You have to write something, you have to record something like a audio, like a podcast, like we're doing now. You have to do video, something like you'd see on YouTube, or it has to be visual, like something you'd post on Pinterest or Instagram. That's it. You pick one of those. Which is going to be the most fun? Which is going to bring you the most joy to you and to your audience? And then you do it, you stick to it. You don't have to be everywhere. You shouldn't be everywhere.
Agreed.
Just pick one, master it, do it well, build an audience. As I mentioned, I blogged for 5 years before I did the podcast. I focused on that and built my audience there before I tried to do everything. That's a big problem today. People trying to be everywhere and do everything, and it's exhausting and it's ineffective. You can't be good everywhere. You have to regard like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Those are distribution channels. for your content. You can't really build authority on those channels without something in writing, audio, video, or images. So you got to pick one of those sources of, I call it rich content, and then you look at social media as the distribution channel.
Agreed. So, where, from a strategy standpoint, now that you provide marketing strategy as a consultant, is
Hmm.
most of it tend to evolve around the social aspect, or is it an all encompassing strategy that they ask you about? And I'm not necessarily asking what you provide, because really they
Yeah,
should all be tied together. But
right.
where are people coming to you as a consultant? Because I think a lot of people get niched into fixing that, looking at one problem as a silo when it's a
Yes,
whole encompassing problem to solve.
you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And um, look, I consider myself a marketing strategist now because at least early in my career, I wrote a lot about social media. I'm
Sure.
sort of known as a social media person, but I'm a marketing strategist. And what I typically find is people will come to me and say, "Oh, we need help with a social media strategy." But once you get into it, um, they don't even have a marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I had one big healthcare company come to me one time and said, "We don't understand Twitter. We want you to sit down and teach us about Twitter." And so once I started getting into the company and learning about what they do, well, you can't have a Twitter strategy without a marketing strategy
Exactly.
unless you know who you are, what you do, what you stand for, why people love you, who loves you, where they love you, then you don't know what to say. You don't know what to do on social media. And so I started talking to this company and I said, look, you're not ready for Twitter. I worked with them 6 months before we ever brought up Twitter again because they just weren't ready. So what I really love is I love figuring out very difficult marketing problems. That is my best. I love it. I love just figuring out really really hard business problems and marketing problems. And I've got this little thing on my site where anybody can sign up for an hour of my time for $200. I started it because so many people were coming to me saying, "I want to pick your brain," and I'm a nice guy. I don't want to say no, so I put this thing up there. So okay, well just go to my site. You can sign up for an hour of my time there, and when they see it's $200, and about 90% of them go away, but 10% of them do it, and I'd say 4 or 5 times a month I do these little consulting sessions. I've done hundreds of them now, and I love it more. It's so much fun because I have 1 hour to figure out what's wrong with this person's business or their marketing, and give them actionable advice. And I have a 100% track record so far, and that's what I really love to do. That's my sweet spot.
Well, that's great, and you're absolutely right about not having a Twitter strategy where if you live inside of a brand,
Hmm.
you can get siloed in your problems and think those are the individual problems to solve. But if you're Joe or Susie customer, you could care less what somebody is seeing on Twitter only, because you're seeing it on Twitter, you're seeing it on a TV commercial, you're seeing on a programmatic display banner, clicking through to a landing page, and if that messaging and everything about it's not all connected, you can forget it. So social is just the easiest way to get those customers engaged in some sort of conversation with you, and that's what's frustrating. So when you're an adjunct professor today at Rutgers.
Hmm.
You're obviously bringing kids in to talk about digital marketing.
Hmm.
When they see somebody who's talking a lot about social as well, where do you kind of help rope them back into it not being just a share and care time, and more to use for a business with engagement, something going beyond likes? What kind of advice do you give kids when in a classroom to help them evolve out of thinking it's just what they were doing when they were 14 on Snapchat?
Well, it's a little different for me because I teach like at the graduate level.
Sure,
So
that's
the
true.
people who take my courses are usually mid to senior level marketing managers at big companies. So usually they're coming in, and the reason is that they realize They've worked in marketing for, 15 or 20 years and they're falling behind. And so they need to get immersed in this and kind of get up to speed. So, they my view of the people that I teach at that level, the thing that's been remarkable, because I've been doing this for 10 years now, almost 10 years, I think, um, is that at the beginning, 10 years ago, people were saying, how do we get on Twitter? Should we be on Twitter? How do we create a profile on Facebook? It's just like, oh my gosh, they're just so far behind. Today, they are very sophisticated. I mean, they know what's going on. They know the role of social media in the marketing mix. And so I kind of take them to a higher level. I kind of look at where things are going, where they need to be to sort of be on the cutting edge, um, to give them some foundational principles they can take back to their businesses to see, are we really getting the most out of it than we possibly can? Are they keeping up with the times? So it's been wonderful to see. And that's one of the reasons I love teaching, because to teach at that level, I'm getting experienced marketing leaders from big companies in the New York City area. To teach that level, I have got to be on top of my game. You cannot, I mean, you cannot get by with any fluff, and so it keeps me fresh. You've got to stay on top of your game to teach at that level, and that helps me create new content. That new content starts to bleed into my speeches, that starts moving into my books. So it's a really kind of cool ecosystem of teaching and speaking and writing, and they all kind of depend on each other.
So, kind of pull out your crystal ball, and you've already predicted one with influencers, but where do you think digital marketing and social will progress next?
Well, it really is evolving, and I'm working on a new book, and it'll be out in February, and the title is Marketing Rebellion. It'll
Great.
be out February 2019. And I don't have a plan or a strategy to write books. What spurs me to write a book is when I see a problem that I just don't understand. And I start diving into it, I get obsessed with it. And once I start figuring it out, that's what kind of turns into a book. And the problem this time is that everywhere I go, I work with big companies, I speak all over the world, I work with startups. Marketers are saying we're stuck, we're falling behind. Our marketing doesn't work like it used to. We don't really understand what's going on. So I kind of had this hypothesis that there's this gap. Uh, what's going on? That I hear the same thing everywhere I go, and I had a hypothesis that perhaps um, marketers weren't really keeping up with the technology. And what I found is that it's not a gap; it's a revolution, and it has something to do with technology, but mostly it has to do with consumer behavior, the way people buy and interact and connect to each other and connect to brands has radically and permanently changed marketing. And what I found was so stunning that it really makes me question what it means to be a marketer today. Two-thirds of our marketing is not our marketing. Two-thirds of our marketing is going on beyond the boundaries of what we see is even happening. And we're not connected to that. We don't acknowledge that. We don't even see that it's happening. And our marketing is becoming less and less and less effective because many of the traditional things that we've relied on, like advertising, is going away. People do not see ads like they used to. They're streaming their video, they're streaming their audio, they're subscribing to these channels without ads. And even if they see your ads, they don't believe them. So, and even social media, uh, people really don't pay attention
Agreed.
to much of the corporate presence on social media. Why would they? Because it's terrible. And that's one of the reasons why we're stuck, because we're just chunking out this social media content because it worked 10 years ago, or it worked 6 years ago, or even three. It doesn't work today. So the book is really about, it's a wake up call to say, look at this, what's happening here. Two-thirds of what's driving our sales is not what we're doing. What is happening out here, and how do we get connected to this other two-thirds? How do we get invited in? And that's what the book is about.
That's exciting. I agree with you completely. I've always believed that the technology part is by far the easiest part until people really figure out human behavior and how to connect better. It doesn't matter what form of marketing it is. It's just that's where a lot of them are failing. So I get it and completely agree. And
Well, we're over reliant on technology.
absolutely. Well, and
We think it's a marketing easy button, and we automate and we automate and we spam, and we have our dashboards, but we don't really know our customers through dashboards, and we're not really doing anything with our marketing automation except pissing people off,
agreed.
to be quite frankly, to be quite frank. And we need to get back to the human roots of marketing. I mentioned that I started out as a journalism major, but I fell in love with marketing when I was a junior. I took a marketing class in college, and I was exposed to this textbook by Dr. Philip Kotler. And in this book, it said marketing is a combination of psychology, sociology, and anthropology. Now, think about that.
Yeah,
Marketing is everything human. And it's like, who wouldn't be excited by that? I was all over that. If I wanted to change my major, but I was out of money. I had to graduate and get a job. But I felt that's when I fell in love with marketing. It was just so amazing to be able to connect to our customers in this human way that builds this emotion and this trust and this empathy. And we are lost. We are sick. Marketing is sick because we forgot that it's all things human. We think it's all things technology, and that's why people hate us. And we can do better. We must do better because the world is leaving us behind.
agreed. Mark, where do people find out more about you, follow you, and just find out where you're speaking, your books? How's the best way for people to connect with you?
It's easy to find me. It's on businessesgrow.com. My blog is there, the podcast, my books, and lots of other interesting and free resources for businesses of all sizes.
Mark, thank you very much for being on A Shark's Perspective.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So there was my conversation with Mark Schaefer, a major influencer in digital marketing, a well-known college educator, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and marketing strategy consultant. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, trust is a point of differentiation today. We know that trust has to be the fundamental basis of our business, yet how many businesses are willing to step up and say, we will never let you down? We still abuse customers with too much marketing that they've told us they don't want. With our digital presence today, we have the greatest opportunity ever to reinforce that trust, but we still see people miss that opportunity. Second, for an influencer, it's having that engaging, trusting audience so that when you speak, you can affect people's opinions and behaviors. And you've got to write something, record something on audio, make videos like on YouTube, or something visual like on Pinterest to really reach your audience. Do the one thing that brings you and your audience the most joy. Pick one, master it, and build an audience. Third, your marketing strategy has to be all-encompassing. The confused buyer always says no. Remember that your customers don't live in any of your internal silos, so don't let them become confused. When you think of all the competing space for people's attention spans, know that they're likely to remember one central message at best about your brand. Social media is a group of channels with an amazing power to help you engage with your customers, but Twitter itself or any particular social media channel should not be a strategy. You have to have an all-encompassing marketing strategy because your customer is listening to you and the focus on them has to always come first. Got a question? Please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. And please know that it's an honor for me to have the chance to earn your trust as we get to know and like each other. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.